Yeah, so Florida, for the most part, it's marshlands, right? It's wetlands. It's swampy. It's not stable to build on. So if you buy, imagine lakefront property, and you're going to impact these wetlands, which has to do with environmental issues too, you got to pay for this. And I'm going to tell you, even though I picked up that land for a good price, right? A really good price, there's still money to be spent on impacting those lands. So I'm going to spend maybe 25 grand just to impact those lands. Then spend maybe another 25 grand to get it ready to build on for the land that I want to impact. And still dedicating part of that property as wetlands. I don't touch it, use it as conservation because of habitat of wildlife and invasive and all kinds of vegetation. It's crazy the things that you learn about. They're called mitigation credits. Now this is something that you don't see in your book at all, but mitigating wetlands, and you had to go through this too for your property. I had to go through it for my properties. So, and I love lakefront property. That is just like an itch that I have to scratch, right? I'm a lakefront or waterfront fiend. I gotta be in front of water. So the next goal is to maybe build or have an oceanfront property, but I'm thinking maybe Mexico. That would be nice.
And it's a right to use.
Huh?
It would be a right to use.
Right to use. Well, because I'm a foreigner, in Mexico, if I buy property, for instance, I found this out, by the way. It's not like you're going to use this in real life. You're probably never going to come across this, but the bank will always hold on to title unless I set up a trust in my family's name. Then the trust can hold. But because I'm a foreigner, I can't do it. But my wife, she's Mexican. So I can put it in her name, and then our family can have it. And then the next goal after that, and I don't know if this is any of your goals, but I want to own an island.
Oh my God, that's my goal too. I told my dad to buy me like.
Okay, come down. So yes, listen.
Don't she get your alimony?
Mine goes to a doctor.
Yeah.
Doctor's from Harry, I'm a very old man.
I would love for your dad to buy you an island. Okay, that'd be great. I wish my mom would buy, or my father would buy me an island, but I'm not gonna. It's crazy. This is crazy though. It's a crazy thought, but I'm going to tell you, you can buy islands for $800,000.
For how much?
$800,000. Get out of town, right? You're thinking, wow, I can't even imagine, because there's $1 million houses here in Orlando. They're not even on a lake, right? They're not on water, but then an island, right? But then you're going to run into all kinds of problems, accessibility of the island, building on the island, getting materials to build on the island, and everything that comes with that. But I've seen islands off the coast of Melbourne, Florida, for this price.
I'm over by me for a heck of a lot less than that. They have islands over there.
Actually, no. You know, it's funny you mention that, because I've seen that specifically over you said Crystal River, right?
Yeah, Crystal River.
Because the water cuts through it, and it kind of makes this little,
Yeah,
you know.
it's a Kings Bay, and then from Kings Bay you go out into the Gulf of Mexico.
That's absolutely
There's
beautiful.
lots of islands.
Have you looked
there,
into it?
too. I have horses, and I don't know how the heck to get the horses out of
A little swim. Anyhow. So, put them on a jet ski, right? No, but I've looked into this. And then, obviously, the next goal after that is to own the Orlando Magic. So, I'm going to buy the Orlando Magic one day. So that's my goal. I don't know how I'm going to kick it out of or take pride from the Voss family, right? But it's going to happen eventually. We'll see.
Hopefully they get better.
Anyhow, so let's get right back into it. Hopefully that's your goal. You see something in the future and you hit this goal, and then it's on to the next one. The type of person that I am, and I don't know if you can relate to this or not, and it's a curse. I talk about this in my video blogs. You've seen it, right? It's a curse that enough is not enough, right? Does anybody believe in this? Does anybody feel that way?
Yes.
You got what you wanted, but you're not satisfied. Luckily, that doesn't apply to marriage. I'm 100% satisfied. That relationship, my wife is watching, right? But, I am so happy with relationship, family, marriage, my son, everything that but I want to build that together. And then she, she is so awesome. She supports everything that I do, and I have crazy ideas, and nobody can tell me that it's a bad idea. That's the problem. So she gives me advice, and then she's asking me the hard questions that I don't want to hear, right? And I'm like, la, 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 okay, let's go ahead and do it, And it's like, I'm going to throw some money at it and see what happens. So it is a curse, and some people have the curse too, but I'm definitely living in it. Anyhow, let's jump right back into it. I got really off track, didn't I? All right, next is all about what starts with the A. Authority, okay? The City Planning Commission, the LGPA, Local Government Planning Agency, has control over 3 things. What are the 3 things? Subdivision plat approval. You remember the subdivision plat map? For a new subdivision, you have to create these plans. This is the name of the plans. It's called plat, P-L-A-T map. Must be submitted to the LGPA. Get it approved by them before you can advertise or sell those lots. Okay? What else? Site plan approval, environmental issues that might come up. We talked about that as well, impacting. And sign control, the actual signage for the entrance of the subdivision. They regulate this as well. You remember when we talked about construction too, and the 3 different types of construction, ways to build up a subdivision? That was on day 1. We'll talk about that in just a second. Now, next we see what? Yeah, let me just recap all the different ways you might be tested on your exam based on this information. Okay, so pay attention to me. I need some participation. Not what you see in front of you, what we learned throughout this 2-week session. Are you guys paying attention?
Yes.
Here it is. There is a box that's formed by intersecting vertical lines 6 miles apart. Starts with an R. What are those lines called? Range lines, with horizontal lines 6 miles apart. Tier lines, township tier lines, township lines. Okay. You make a box that's how many miles on each side. This box is called a township. Okay? Townships. 6 miles by 6 miles. How many square miles is that? 36 square miles. Each one of those square miles is called a what? Starts with an S. Section. So how many sections are within a township? 36. Okay. When you number sections in a township, where do you start? In the northeast corner with section number? 1. And number in what type of fashion? Snake-like until you reach number 36. Now, each section is how many square miles? 1. How many acres in 1 square mile? 640 acres in 1 square mile. How many square feet in an acre?
40.
How many old ladies? 40. How fast?
35.
In what zone? 60 zone. 4 old ladies drive 35 in a 60 zone. Listen, we are the originators of that, okay? So if you hear it anywhere else, we created that. But it will help you recall for exam purposes. Are you guys with me?
Yes.
That's all the different ways you might be tested. You got to know the measurements and the conversions for that. And you should be lucky if you get those questions on your exam. Because if they give you northwest quarter, northeast quarter, southwest quarter, and so forth, what number do you place in your calculator first? 640, right? And divide by those denominators and you got your answer. Be careful of the word and, right? If they say northwest quarter of the southwest quarter and northeast quarter of the southeast quarter, how many properties are we talking about? 2. The word and separates. Each description separates each calculation. Now, we're all caught up as to the different ways you might be tested. Next, we see state documentary what? State what? Documentary.
Stamps.
Oh, well, actually, no. I'm going way ahead. Hey, that's why. That was a test. You guys passed. Congratulations. All right. Next, we see a formula here that you need to know. Now, there's no math for this question, but they are going to test you on the formula itself. You have to know how the formula is structured. There were two calculations Linda showed you yesterday. Do you remember it?
Yes.
GRM and GIM.
Yes.
GRM stands for gross rent multiplier. This is used to calculate how many months before you break even. And you can use that to figure out value as well. And GIM is gross what? Income multiplier. This is used to calculate how many years before you break what? Even. So that's the difference. GRM, gross rent. Rent will help you understand monthly. Gross income, that's for annual. And you use annual income to determine that. And you'll be tested on it. Mark my words. Let's continue. Methods of purchasing property with an existing what?
Mortgage.
Subject to, you remember this? Subject to is kind of like a sublease. With this one, the original borrower is still on the hook for the debt, but they're charging somebody else mortgage payments essentially, right? But that's not good enough for us. Imagine if we're in that circumstance. We want to completely take our debt, the paper, and transfer it over to another so they're responsible and we're no longer on the hook. That's the next one. It's called assumption of an existing what?
Mortgage.
Mortgage, loan, right? So you're somebody else is assuming the paper for it. Now, person, obviously, if you want to completely relieve yourself of the debt, they must qualify in the same way you qualify for in order to accomplish this. What clause, you remember this, what clause would prevent assumption of an existing loan? The what? The due to on sale clause. Before you take over somebody's debt, do you need to know what you're getting into?
Yes.
Should they request a payoff balance?
Yes.
That's officially known as requesting the estoppel certificate or estoppel letter. Okay, it seems like few of us, basically all of us, can't remember that from that chapter. Okay, so estoppel letter or certificate is to verify the loan balance, to know exactly what you're getting into. Now you might have to pay the remaining balance stuff. Maybe that existing loan only covers part of the purchase price. All right. You remember purchase money mortgage too? Purchase money mortgage. A buyer pays part of the purchase price and the seller finances the remaining balance, owner financing. In return, what will the seller place against the property? Yeah, so the title will pass to the buyer, and the seller, they call him a vendor. Vendi is buyer. The seller will place a vendor's lien against the property and will remain until the balance is satisfied. Okay, hopefully we're looking down and participating here instead of looking at our cell phones. All right, let's continue. Let's continue. Next we see, you gotta pay attention. So your subconscious, you're retaining the information without you even knowing it, okay? But you gotta focus, pay attention, and you'll be better off, trust me. My words are gonna haunt you in your dreams, okay? When you're taking your exams, hopefully you're gonna hear my voice come up when you encounter a specific question, and it will help you answer it. And I gave you some test-taking tips already, which we'll recap before the end of our session today. Now, where are we at? Designated? Sales what? What's next? Designated? Oh, no. Okay. I'm messing you guys up again. That was a test. Glad you guys are paying attention.
Temporary license, 25.
Okay. Just so before we continue and completely move on to our next, before you can substitute a new party to take over the debt for the existing. Even though it's in the contract, in your mortgage documents, all parties must sign one specific agreement. And you gotta know this, you're gonna be tested on it. It starts with the N, it's called the novation. Yes, perfect. Now, you're a spouse of somebody in the military. You have a blossoming real estate career, let's say in Savannah, Georgia, but now you have to pack up and move to Orlando and stay on base out here. You lose the opportunity in Georgia. Yeah, you can keep the license. You don't have to relinquish that license. You can keep it active with that same broker, but let's be honest with each other. You think you're going to be able to handle transactions from that distance? Probably not. You're going to lose steam. You kind of have to start all over again here in Florida. DeBeeper feels, you remember DeBeeper, right?
Yes.
Department of Business and Professional Regulation. Florida Licensing Authority. They feel sympathy for this spouse, and they will possibly, if they can verify they have a valid license in that state, give them what type of license here? Temporary, for them to practice and get on their feet. But it's only good for how many months?
6 months.
6 months. Is it renewable?
No.
No. Perfect. To remember, okay, we need to know the difference between this vocabulary, this terminology, appraisal terminology. A lot of us use this interchangeably. Cost, price, value. What's the cost of that? What's the value? What's the price? How much did you pay? But each of these have their own meanings. We need to know the difference. Here they are in front of us. So cost is the expense to create a good or service. Next one is what?
Right.
It's what a good or service is sold for, or what's paid for a good or service. And then value, my definition, the power of what a good or service can be exchanged for. Or in other words, what it's worth, right? Your textbook is 2 V's. It's worth, okay, what it's worth. So let's see if you're paying attention. Property was built for $250. What is that?
Cost.
Cost. The property was appraised at $500. What is that? Value. Who determines value? Appraiser, right? And the property was sold for $400. What is that?
Right.
Price. You guys are doing great. Let's continue. Next, we see state dock stamp taxes on the promissory what? How are dock stamps on the promissory note going to show up on your closing disclosure? Maybe you see that in front of you. Gives you a clear indication. Will show up as a what? Debit to who? Look what it says. Debit to who? To the buyer specifically. Buyer only on the closing disclosure. All right. Any questions on state tax? What are the rates for those state taxes?
$235.
You remember? We represent them in mils. Makes sense because tax rates are mills. A mil is just 1/1000th of a dollar, 1/10 of a penny. So remember, it's 0.002. How many mils is that? It's 2 mils. 0.0035. 3.5 mils. Now 0.007. 7 mils. So and it's from smallest to largest, right? Those rates don't change. You need to know this for answering these questions. I is 2 mils. N,
3.5 mils.
okay, intangible tax, that's the I, 2 mils. The N is note stamps, 3.5 mils. And the S, stamps on the deed, 7 mils. 2 times 3.5 equals what? 7. You got it. So you have the rates. You just got to plug them in and multiply and potentially add at the end. Real simple stuff. If you have a new loan, how many taxes do you pay on it?
2.
The intangible and on all loans, new and existing. If you have an existing loan, you only pay the note stamp tax, right? And if they're asking you for stamps on the deed, it's just one tax, right? It's stamps on the deed. It's the S tax, 0.007. You'll have some more information about this. I'm just giving you some foreshadowing. Now, let's continue. We see designated what? Sales associates. And obviously, stamps on the promissory note, we know how it's going to show up, but now we see designated sales associates. What is a designated sales associate? You remember dual agency?
Right.
Yes.
And how it was illegal in the state of Florida?
Yes.
What's dual agency? Why is it illegal?
You can represent buyer and seller in the same transaction.
Non-judicial.
Okay, now Ray said you can't represent buyer and seller in the same transaction. Is that true?
No.
Can you represent buyer and seller in the same transaction?
As a transaction.
Yeah, as a what?
Transaction.
Transaction broker. We'll recap those 3 relationships in just a second, but okay. It's where a licensee tries to represent both prospective buyer and prospective seller in the same transaction. Key word,
Fiduciary.
fiduciarily. Yes. What does fiduciary mean?
Loyal.
Trust, alliance, allegiance. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay, so how can you have alliance with both sides, buyer and seller, if buyer and seller are dealing at what with one another?
Arm's length.
Arm's length. This is known as caveat emptor. You'll be tested on that, which means let the buyer what?
Beware.
Be on guard. It's Latin, right? So because they have opposite interests, buyer wants to get the cheapest price, seller wants to get the most money possible. You can't have fiduciary with both sides. Trust, alliance, allegiance. Look out for each side's best interest. So, if you try to do this, it's an illegal dual agency. It is. Think of a double agent, right? Think of a spy movie. They're playing what? Both sides against one another to benefit themselves or a third party. Unacceptable in the real estate profession. But is there an exception to the rule? Every time you learn a rule, you learn the what?
Exception.
The exception, and it's called designated sales what? Associates. It's where one broker can designate two sales associates from the same brokerage to act as single agents for both buyer and seller, complete the deal, and make their commission. But the buyer and seller have to have assets of how much or more apiece? That's the threshold, $1 million. And it's acceptable. And they have to fill out a disclosure verifying that they have those assets and meet that threshold. Does that make sense? That's what you're tested on.
So, just to clarify, a designated sales associate is for non-residential when they have that
Non-residential.
asset, when they meet the asset threshold. If it is residential, it's a transaction broker?
No, because then it would be an illegal dual agency. Imagine, I said same broker, two sales associates, same broker. Imagine I work for ABC Realty. Actually, we both work for ABC Realty.
Okay.
You're a sales associate, I'm your coworker, I'm a sales associate too. ABC Realty is here, there's a broker for that. You have a buyer, I have a seller. Can we both be single agents for buyer and seller, work together and complete the deal under this brokerage company? No, it's unacceptable. Because of the relationship. Single agent with your buyer, single agent with my seller, we can't bring them together.
So what is
It's the same thing as an illegal dual agency.
So what is
The
it?
fact that it's two different real estate agents doesn't matter. If you're both working for the same brokerage company, unacceptable.
But it was different.
But if it's two different brokerage companies, yeah, it is. Now let me ask you a question. It is acceptable if it's two different brokerage companies. It doesn't matter the relationship. That's why I mentioned which relationship would best suit what you're trying to accomplish. Represent both buyer and seller, bring them together, complete the deal, and make commission off of both sides. Transaction. Must I recap the three relationships? Let's do it. The first one was no brokerage, non-representative, no representation. Are you representing them? Are you involved with negotiation?
No.
No, you're not.
Paperwork.
So you're limited to just handling the what? The paperwork. Okay, perfect. Now, pay attention up here. Transaction. I'm recapping the three relationships. So transaction broker relationship. Can you represent both sides?
Yeah.
Are you involved with negotiation?
Yeah.
Yes. And you can represent both sides, buyer and seller. Can you make a commission off of both sides?
Yes.
But you represent them in a what type of fashion? Neutral, impartial fashion. You're not using information you receive, confidential information against them to benefit yourself or another person within the transaction. Okay? Remain neutral, remain impartial. You're a facilitator is what they call it within the transaction. And it is acceptable. I'm not done recapping the three. And then I'll answer your question. And then the single agent. Single agency is the only one where what exists starts with an F. Fiduciary, trust, alliance, allegiance. You're going to choose your what? You're going to choose your what? Side. Whatever side you choose to represent, that's what you have with them. Fiduciary. You're looking out for their best interest. Now, you remember that because fiduciary only exists with single agent, what is your client called? Starts with a P. Principal. The other two, no broker, transaction, what is your client called? A customer. Perfect. Any questions on this? No? Brett.
Right. As long as the sales agent is, all they can do is present the offers,
Yeah.
right?
How are you involved as a transaction
As a
broker?
transaction
How do you
broker.
remain neutral? You're just presenting what to each side?
The offers.
Until they can reach a what?
Agreement.
It's known as mutual assent or a meeting of the...
Fine, right. But if he's negotiating the price, then
Yeah.
he cannot be representing
can.
both of them.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
But you gotta remain
One he
neutral
can
and
just
impartial.
offer, the other one he's negotiating.
You make an offer, I'm gonna present it to the other party.
As long as he's
They
only
make
doing
a
that.
counter offer, I present it to you. What do you
That's
think
all.
about it? If you need my professional advice, yeah, I think it's a good deal. Is there anything wrong with that? No. Remain neutral. Okay? Remain impartial. You're not gonna say, hey, listen, they're desperate. You could offer them a little bit less. Are you gonna present something like that to your client?
No.
As a transaction broker? No, that's a violation of that limited confidentiality. Keep that in mind.
And it'll probably count.
Good question, by the way. I appreciate that. Next, we see method or degree of what? There are methods used to test for fixtures. Okay, do you remember this? Testing for fixtures? Determine if it should stay behind as a fixture, or you can take it with you as what? Personal. Personal property has a French name. It's also known as, yes, it's chattel, like Chanel, but chattel, right? That's personal property. So, let's go down the list of the methods used to test for fixtures, including the one we see in front of us. Forms the acronym IRMA. IRMA. Yes. I stands for intent of the parties. What were the intentions of each party upon negotiation of the sale contract? Was it intended it should have stayed behind, or was it intended it was going to be taken with you? Now, listen, let's just be honest with each other. The sale contract will specify items to be included. Right beneath it, items to be excluded. So it's on the contract. Should relieve any confusion right there. But do people still have arguments as to which is, yeah, of course, all the time, buyers and sellers. And you deal with it. So, as a real estate professional, how do you handle it? Well, you can go down the list and use more than one of these. R is relationship between the parties. Are we talking about buyer and seller or tenant and landlord? If we're talking about tenants and landlords, does the rule change?
Yes.
As a tenant, if you attach something to a landlord's property, okay, must it remain? Whose property is it now?
The landlord.
If you move out, the lease agreement ends, you want to move to another location, can you potentially take it with you? Yes? If you return the property to its original what? State or condition, like a decorative ceiling fan, put up the original, right? You should be good. And as long as you don't cause what? If it's a business and it's a lease, and as part of your business, the item, can you take it with you?
Yes.
Absolutely, that's personal. But let's talk about causing damage, right? It says method of attachment, but what's more important is detached. If you know it's going to cause damage when you try to remove it, should you leave it behind?
Yes.
Yes, of course. We gave the example of that countertop microwave, right? Can you easily remove it without causing damage? Yeah, you take it with you as personal. But personal can easily turn into fixtures and vice versa through this method of attachment. If we take that same microwave, put it above your range, mount it in the kitchen cabinets, vent it through the attic, what would it be considered now? Would be considered a fixture and should remain. You try to remove something like that, you think it's probably going to cause some damage?
Yes.
Potentially. And then on top of that, it might not be easy to what? Replace. That's the last. A in Irma, okay? So if it's not easily replaceable, you should leave it behind.
Okay, so what's the highlight?
Intent of the parties, relationship between the parties, method of attachment, they say annexation sometimes, and then adaptation of the article. Those are the four. Let's continue. Background check of criminal history. Is this a part of your application process to become a licensee?
Yes.
So do they verify your criminal history?
Yes.
What level background check do they do?
Two.
So, yes, it's level 2 background check through FBI and FDLE. What's FDLE? Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Okay. If it happened outside of state, you need to go to that state. Usually they have a website, reveal the information. What do they want to know about? Felonies, misdemeanors, and even traffic offenses. Are we talking about minor traffic violations like speeding tickets, parking tickets? No. Are we talking about DUIs? We're talking about hit and runs, driving with a suspended license, you got arrested? Yes. Now, what else do they want to know about? Verdicts, right? They want to know about guilty, right? They want to know about nolo contendere, no contest, you chose not to fight, right? That's still going to show up. They want to know about adjudication being withheld. They want to know about all of this stuff. Criminal history. There's a section of your application. Court dates, outcomes, explanation. Be proactive, write some reference letters. 3, one of them could be a relative. Do you remember this? If you haven't submitted your application, you're worried about it, don't worry. I've seen people that have serious background and were still able to get their license because they've learned their lesson, turn over a new leaf, I'm not that person anymore. They pleaded, it took a lot of time, took up to 3 months, but they finally got approved, and now they're not that person anymore. You make mistakes when you're young, sometimes big ones, and it haunts you ever since. So, what if you have a license and a crime is potentially committed? Do you have to notify the beeper?
Yes.
Within how much time? 30 days. 30 days, they got to know about it. And then they're going to get down to the bottom of it. They're probably going to do another criminal history search on you. Application and fingerprints must accompany one another. haven't done it yet, need to do it as soon as possible. I know about 5 to 6 of you are approved already. I mentioned that beginning of the first week. You submit your application and fingerprints on this date. By the end of next week, you should get approved. And most of you, well, it seems like about a third of you are.
Just recap what you just said. Once you get your license, and then you.
And then a crime is potentially committed.
Can you lose your license?
Oh yeah, of course. Absolutely, but you gotta notify what's going on. It's at their discretion to determine
What time?
if you should have a license or not. And they're gonna do the research, trust me. It's gonna
You
trigger an
want, like,
investigation.
police reports and all that stuff. Right.
Well, cool,
You're an adult, you gotta make your decisions, okay? But remember, we plan to be here till 2. So, I'll let you make that decision, but, we're gonna continue, okay? So, let's move on. What are we gonna be tested on next? Yeah, so Commission's general powers and duties, they're divided into 3 areas of responsibility. Do you remember what they are? Executive, quasi-legislative, and quasi-judicial. Okay, so we're going to be tested on, obviously, one of those. Executive, they have, simply put, they have authority over your what?
License.
Over your what? I got to hear you guys.
License.
Can they grant you a license?
Yes.
Award you a can they deny you from getting a license?
Yes.
Florida Real Estate Commission, so they have control over it, right? If you violate, well, first of all, does FREC have the authority to establish, modify, and enforce laws? Yes, but what type of law?
Real estate.
Real estate license law, that's why it falls under quasi-legislative authority and power. Make sense? Kind of laws, real estate law, not criminal, right? So what happens if you violate these kind of laws, real estate law that they establish?
The suspension.
Enacted and enforced. Well, the most severe penalty FREC can impose is do what with your license? Revocation. Okay, can they recommend you serve a jail sentence?
Yes.
Can they recommend you pay damages?
Yes.
Restitution to an injured party? Yes, they just can't enforce it themselves. They have control over your what?
License.
Falls once again under executive power. Can they fine you?
Yes.
Up to how much? 5,000. Can they suspend your license?
Yes.
Up to how long? 10 years. If they revoke your license, is it permanent?
Yes.
It's permanent revocation. Can you get a license again in the state of Florida?
No.
Wait,
So can you get a license in another state is the question, right? Potentially. Are they going to look at your history from Florida though?
Yes.
Are they going to ask you to disclose that on your application?
Yes.
You think they're going to find out even if you don't tell them?
Yes. Background check.
You think you're going to get a license in another state if you got your license revoked in Florida? Well, it's at their discretion. It's at their discretion, but do you think it's going to weigh heavily against you? Oh yeah. Anyhow, just questions you have to ask yourself, but it kind of makes sense here. Next, we see what type of ownership.
Concurrent.
There's 2 types, sole and concurrent. You remember the 2? Sole and concurrent. What does sole mean? Sole ownership?
Uno. One.
Yeah, it's a property owned by how many people?
One.
There's words used to describe this. You'll be tested on it. State exam. It's also known as an estate in what? Remember? Severalty. Think of being severed off from everybody else. Sole ownership, 1. But then we have co-ownership, or to be more accurate, concurrent ownership. Concurrent ownership or co-ownership is how many people now? 2 or more. And there are 3 types. I'm going to recap all 3 right now. You might want to pay attention, okay? And everybody tuning in, you might want to pay attention. So the 3 types, and you're definitely going to be tested on this for your state exam. I can almost guarantee about 3 questions. Tenants in what is the first one? In common, yes, tenants in common. 2 or more people, we know the concept is co-ownership, right? Each person can have same levels of interest, percentage of ownership, or different levels or percentages of ownership. You remember this?
Yes.
And could be acquired at different times. It doesn't have to be distribution of ownership at the same time. But if you die, imagine we're all tenants in common, I die, what happens to my, let's say, 1.5%? It goes to my legal what? My closest relative, my lineal descendant, my next to kin. You've heard of this. Joint tenancy. You remember joint tenancy? A little bit different. It's co-ownership, 2 or more persons, but each person has to have the same percentage of ownership. And the only way to distribute the same percentage of ownership,
At the same time.
exactly, to distribute at the same time. That's the only way you do the math properly, right? Imagine we're all joint tenants now. I die, what happens to, let's say, my 4%? What does it go to now?
Goes to the other.
It gets distributed equally among the surviving joint tenants. Whoever survives thrives. Yes, exactly. This will help you recall for exam purposes. This is known as the right of survivorship. And there's 2 that have right of survivorship. Joint tenancy and the next one we're going to describe. But let me mention something to you, and we talked about it on this day. You remember that you can sell your share
Right.
as a joint tenant? But whoever you sell your share to outside of the original, can they ever be joint tenants with the rest?
No.
No, they're going to be regarded as a tenant in what?
Common.
Without the right of survivorship. So they don't get that perk of, oh, one of the original dies, they get a little piece of it.
No.
If they die, they're a tenant in common, it goes to the legal what?
Here.
So it's actually better to have a tenancy in common
Who said?
because
It depends on the circumstance, it depends on the situation.
if you're the person
What if
who
it's
died,
family? What if it's cousins? Right? It really depends on the circumstance. I can't say one is better than the other. Because the next one is between a married couple. Right?
Right.
So that's based on the circumstance. It's a married couple. So tenancy by what? Do you remember what it's called? Entireties. It's a joint. It's like a joint tenancy, but it's between husband and what's this husband and wife? But to be more PC, married couple. One spouse passes, surviving spouse receives their ownership. Yes, it has the right of survivorship. Okay, let's continue.
Has the law been changed? The phrase?
Married couple. Married couple, because
Right.
we know laws have changed when it comes to marriage. All right. Now let's talk about homesteading your property. It means you're claiming your property. Is it still recording? Yes. Perfect. You're claiming your property as your primary what?
Residence.
You can have 1 million properties. Only in Florida, only one can be your homestead. Your primary. People do this because it comes with protections and benefits. We talked about the protections, right? Protection of the family, automatic inheritance rights, surviving spouse receives a life estate no matter what, children are vested remainderment no matter what, even if the will says otherwise, protection against personal debt. You remember personal debt? What's personal debt? Student loan, educational loans, car loans, medical bills, credit cards. Can those companies force you to sell your homestead to satisfy that debt with them?
No.
No.
What if you stop paying your property taxes?
Yeah.
Yes.
What if you stop making your mortgage payments?
Yes.
Can they foreclose?
Yes.
They can. Sell your property at auction, right? Okay, so they can, and even homeowners association, right? And I think even construction liens potentially, but anyhow. So I think we understand the protections, but the benefit that it comes with that everybody wants to take advantage of is the homestead tax exemption. Now automatically how much? 25, but it's up to 50. Automatically 25 up to 50. Do you remember this? If your assessed value is between 25 and 75,000, this is in front of you on that first chart, right? Then you only get the base of how much? 25. For city, what are the 3 components that make up your property tax bill? City, county, and school board. Okay? Perfect. I think we understand this. So, here's the thing. There are some additional exemptions on top of that. We'll talk about it in the next chart. Disabilities and veterans and so forth, but I'm going to hold off for just a second. What if your assessed value is more than 75,000? And by the way, who determines assessed value every year?
Property appraiser.
County appraiser, right? It's for tax purposes. It's not the value of your home. It's what they're going to charge you taxes on. Not the same thing as market value, just so we're not confused. So if your assessed value, which is most of our properties here in Orange County, let's just be honest with each other. If it's over 75, do you get the maximum initially?
Yeah. 25.
Now, you get the base of 25 for what? City, county, and school board, but only get an additional 25 for what? City.
And county.
What's the most initial you can get for school board? 25, right? But could you qualify for some additional on top of the 25 to 50? We'll look at the other charts, yes. If you're a widow or a widower, how much for that additional? 500. Legally what? Blind, 500 for that. What do we see next?
Disabled, no.
Disabled. Well, it says totally and permanently disabled, non-veteran. How much for that? 500. And what's the last one? Quadriplegic, quad, 4 limbs, don't have the use of all 4 of your, extremities. Totally disabled, totally exempt for the homesteaded property. Nice, right? I mean, unfortunate, but I mean, that's. Listen, I'd rather have the use of my limbs, and God bless those individuals. I mean, that's, I can't even imagine. Yes?
The quadriplegic, that person have to be the owner of the property?
Yes, of course, it's their primary residence.
No, I'm saying this, if I'm the owner and my son is.
No, you are the owner. Okay? Now check this out, look. In the last chart we see this is benefits for who? Starts with a V. Veterans, okay? Now if you're at least how much percent disabled in service-connected injury? 10%. Do you get an additional amount of how much?
5,000.
5,000. On top of that 25 to 50. What's next? What do you see? Totally disabled, service-connected, 100%. Exempt. And even surviving spouses of somebody who passed away in the military, 100% exempt. But let me recap something with you. Every year, what's determined for your property by a county appraiser? The what value? Starts with the A. Assessed value. When you subtract all the exemptions you qualify for, what's left over? What is that called? It starts with the T.
Taxable.
Taxable value. Good job. Just making sure you understand. Now, what do we see next? Individuals who are exempt from what? From real estate licensure? Really? I mean, there's so many different exemptions, right? If you're selling your own property, do you need a license?
No.
No, you're exempt, right? If you're selling cemetery lots,
No.
do you need a license for that? No? One of my previous students sold cemetery lots. Didn't he come and speak with you guys?
Yeah.
Elias passed the state exam the first time? Okay, so, used to sell cemetery lots. I just think it was too perfect for him to say that, right? Because I mentioned it to you and you probably think I was BSing with you guys. No, my students sold cemetery lots. One sold it over the phone at least that I remember. I mean, that's an odd conversation. Anyhow, what about the renting of mobile home lots?
No,
You know license for that?
it's not fixed.
Attorneys acting within the scope of their professional duties in connection with a real estate transaction, exempt. CPAs performing accounting matters in connection with a real estate transaction, exempt. People who are given POA. What is POA? You're acting on the owner's behalf with this document. Must be recorded in a public records, and before you can record it, must be what? Well, it has to be done with the power of attorney document.
Notarized.
Starts with an A. Acknowledged. Okay, acknowledged, which means having it notarized, stamped, witness, 2 adults, recorded in a public records. Now, we already talked about and recap power of attorney, so that's good right there, and we might just see it somewhere, I don't know, maybe on the exam. I had a dream about it. And owners of timeshare periods, I mean, come on, let's just be honest with each other. If it's your timeshare, you own it, can you rent it out to somebody?
Yes.
Can you sell it?
Yes.
Now, do you remember that if you live in an apartment complex and you refer a buddy to that same apartment complex, can you receive a little something something for
Yeah.
a referral of real estate business? Yeah, no more than how much cash? $50. You got it.
I know the power of attorney, the person has to be also competent to pass on that power of
Yeah,
attorney.
of course, yeah. Let's continue. Next we see a what type of mortgage? Okay, what does the word amortization mean? Do you remember?
Extinguish and debt.
The level payment.
To systematically kill
The mortgage.
or deaden. And that's what you're doing with each monthly mortgage payment. You're killing your loan. Do you remember this?
Yes.
Okay, your monthly mortgage payment consists of how many parts?
2.
What are the 2 parts? Principal?
Interest.
Interest. Principal is the part that goes towards killing a loan. Interest is the portion that kills you. You get it? In the bank's pocket. For giving you the loan, right? In the beginning of the loan term, you remember we talked about those words, that title, 30-year fixed rate amortized level payment plan mortgage. Usually they stretch it over 30 years for home purchases. That's common, right? Fixed rate, what is fixed rate?
Your payment stays the same.
Not
No,
payment, but
interest.
interest.
Same.
Locked in, right, throughout the 30-year loan term. That's why the rate is usually a little bit higher than an ARM, right? Because ARMs fluctuate, but fixed rate stays the same. And then level payment plan.
Same payment.
Payment stays the same over that 30-year term. So, in the beginning of the loan term, the majority of your payment, let's say $1,000. Let's say 700 of that is most likely going to go to what? Interest in the bank's pocket, right? And the lesser portion will actually go towards principal, amortization of the loan. Remember, amortization systematically kill or debt. What part goes towards killing the loan? Principal, not interest, right? But what happens over time? Well, principal is going to what? Principal is going to, the principal portion is going to increase. Interest will therefore decrease. But the payment stays the same. Okay? So they gradually change over time, but let's be honest with each other. You don't really start killing your loan until the end of the loan term, right? So that's why people make additional payments directly towards what? Principal or interest? Principal. To kill the loan that much quicker, loan term is reduced. And you know the statistics that exist out there for it. Next we see the next piece of information, it's what? Condos. Okay, condos are unique from any type of property you've probably ever encountered because you share in the expense of common elements. You basically split the cost of all the most important things within that community. The roofs, the walls, the elevator shafts, the stairwells, the facilities, the basketball, tennis court, pool area, maintenance, and so forth. So, and that usually your contribution is through what type of fees?
HOAs.
Condo fees, right? And you might even have to pay HOA fees if it's like the condo that I own in Hunters Creek or that I've owned in the past, right? HOA, Hunters Creek fees, and condo fees. So that's reducing your profitability, which is not so great, but it does keep that condo complex looking beautiful. If you want to create a new condo complex, you need at least 2 units. The Florida Department of Condos, Timeshares, Mobile Homes,
Yes.
they basically designate, they say, hey, listen, it has to be at least 2 units for you to accomplish this. And you have to file some documents. You might just be tested on those documents. What documents do you have to file? Declaration of condominium. There you go. And there's a few other disclosures, or documents that have to be recorded in our public records. All right. Civil Rights Act of what?
1866.
Whenever we're talking about discrimination based on race and race only, what date are we referring to? 1866. Anything more than race, now we're talking about 19 what? 1968. Yes. Now 1966 is when segregation, or 64 is when segregation entered this country. Martin Luther King had a dream. That whole movement brought an end to segregation. It's foolish to believe that we could be separate yet equal, right? But that's not a date you're necessarily going to be tested on for your state exam. So the difference, and most likely, because I remember this from my state, 1866, 1968. How do you figure out the difference? Race and race only? 1866. Anything more? 1968. Now I know it was established, it was established 1966, but they included familial and handicap status 1988 is when it was amended. But the date you need to know is 1968, excuse me, all right? What is on that list of protected classes? Do you remember there's 7 of them? Think of how to spell the words fresh what? Fresh corn, then remove the vowels, right? Vowels are A-E-I-O-U, and sometimes Y, because you got to memorize it. Okay, so F, I feel like the mask, right? P-A-R-T-Y, because I gotta, right? I'm corny, just deal with it. All right, so F is familial status. The first R, race, sex, handicap status, color, religion, and national origin. Those are the 7 you got to memorize, okay? So that's awesome that we have these protections in place today. Let's continue. We're going to get to 40, then we'll take a break, okay? Now, voluntary delivery and what? Is what we see next.
Acceptance.
Before a deed, the property transfer is effective, the conveyance instrument, a deed, must be delivered to the grantee, the new owner, and accepted by them. To make a deed valid, to accomplish that, to transfer it, the person giving, who are they called? Grantor must be what? Competent. And sign the what? Deed in front of how many adult witnesses?
Two.
But the person receiving the deed, do they have to be competent?
No.
Or even sign the deed?
No.
No. Okay, that's why you can give property to your what?
Kids.
Your kids are not competent, but do they have the right to receive ownership rights in the property? Yes, they do. But if they want to convey, then they have to be what? Competent. Can you enter into a contract for purchase and sale of real estate with a minor? Potentially, yes, you can. You remember this?
Yes.
But it's a what type of contract? Starts with a U.
Unilateral.
Unilateral, what's the prefix? Uni, which means, think of a unicycle, will help you remember for exam purposes. One party must perform, the adult, and one party can void at any time. The minor, that's why it's also known as being void up. Bull. There were 3 examples of a unilateral contract, that's just one example. Do you want to recap the other 2? Let's go ahead and do it. A brokerage incentive. You remember a brokerage incentive? I'm your broker, I decide to give you an incentive for the month. I say, hey, if you hit $500,000 in sales for the month, I'm gonna give you a $2,000 bonus. You're thinking, hey, that's great, right? Why is it unilateral though? Who must perform, who can void at any time?
The real estate agent got void at any time. The broker must perform with the real estate
Hey,
agent.
listen, do you have to hit the numbers for the month?
No.
No. And if you don't hit the numbers, I don't have to give you anything, right? It just means you're not going to get the bonus.
Right.
But if you do hit the numbers, do I have to perform?
Yes.
Yes. One party must perform, the other party can void. And the last example is an option contract. Rent with the option to what?
Buy.
Okay, so you remember options? Option or optionee? So it's structured like a lease. At the end of the lease, do you have to buy it? No, you can walk away. If you want to buy it, do I have to sell it to you?
Yeah.
That's the agreement and the negotiated price upon entering into the option contract. Now, let's continue. Next we see, we already talked about this. Yes, we talked about legal descriptions. I recapped the different ways, various ways we can be tested. What about this next one? Okay, we know about contracts, right? Real estate contracts. Real estate contracts specifically must have 5 essential elements. You remember the 5 essential elements? Forms the acronym COLIC. Think of a baby who won't stop crying because they got gases, discomfort. C stands for what? Competent parties. Okay, we got to recap this for sure. O is for offer and acceptance. L is for legal purpose. I is what we're tested on here, okay? In writing and signed must meet the statute of what? Frauds. Remember, real estate contracts, including lease and listing agreements for a term of longer than what? 1 year, must be in writing and what?
Signed.
To be what?
Valid.
No, not valid, enforceable in the court of law. Meaning that the fact that, first of all, the fact that a verbal real estate contract exists doesn't mean it's invalid. It just means if you try to enforce a verbal contract in the court of law, a judge is thinking it's all he say what? I want to see some agreed upon terms. I want to see something in writing that I can easily enforce between these 2 individuals. And that's why this exists, right? But there is an exception in which a verbal real estate contract could be valid and enforceable. What is it? The seller allowed the buyer to pay a part of the what? Purchase price. That's required. There must be a paper trail, right? And either move in, take possession, or make improvements. Then a judge would allow the case to be heard. Any other circumstance, it would have to meet the statute of what? Be in writing and signed. That's what the statute of frauds is all about. Just to make a contract valid, it has to have 4. Competent parties, offer and acceptance, legal purpose, and consideration. You remember the 2 types of consideration? Valuable and good. Valuable means in exchange for cash or things of value. Good consideration, what? Love and affection. If you give property to your children, what type of consideration do you think that's most likely to happen? Good. Okay, perfect. Let's take a break. Then we're going to continue where we left off. How you guys feel? A lot of good information, right? It's going to be a full day today.